Hey guys, tonight we're going to sink. Not in the way you think about when you're worrying about bills or that awkward thing you said 7 years ago that still pops into your head at 3 a.m. No, this is a deliberate, gentle letting go. You're going to leave the noisy, brightly lit world of surface thoughts behind and descend into a place where the rules are written in pressure and whispered in darkness. Our starting point is a simple, quiet contradiction. Everything we thought we knew about intelligence, about what it means to be smart, to be aware, to think, might be embarrassingly incomplete. And the deep ocean, that vast forgotten 3/4 of our planet, is the one patiently waiting to correct our homework. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps more than you know. And if you're feeling social tonight, drop a comment below telling me where you're listening from and your local time. It's always a strangely comforting thought. This little community of us drifting off to thoughts of the abyss from different corners of the spinning world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take a breath. Not here, in your room, but there, at the imaginary surface. You feel the last warmth of the sun on your back, a phantom sensation, and then you begin to sink. The light goes first. That blazing, interrogating brightness of the surface world fades to a dim blue, then a twilight indigo, and then it's gone. You're wrapped in a darkness so complete it feels physical, like velvet against your skin. And your first thought, the very human one, is, it's so quiet. But that's our first mistake. The one we're going to spend this whole journey unravelling. The deep ocean isn't quiet. It's speaking a different language entirely. What we perceive as silence is just our own sensory poverty. Our ears are pitiful, landlocked things, designed for catching the rustle of leaves and the murmur of a voice across a campfire. Down here, the medium isn't just air. It's a dense, cold soup of water that conducts sound 5 times faster and over vastly greater distances. If you could truly listen, you'd hear a symphony of mundane wonders, the tectonic groans of the earth itself, a low sub-bass rumble that travels for thousands of miles, the constant gentle hiss of snowfall, not of snow, but of marine snow, the endless drizzle of dead plankton and detritus from the world above, a soft, shushing static, the clicks and pops of shrimp like fat raindrops on a tin roof, the distant haunting songs of whales, complex patterns that weave through the water like auditory ghosts, carrying stories of migration and identity across oceanic basins. This isn't an absence of signal. It's a bandwidth we're not tuned to. Imagine walking into a vast library and, because you can't read the language of the books, declaring it a silent, empty hall. That's us. In the deep. We've equated our inability to hear with there being nothing to say. It's the height of intellectual arrogance, really. The deep ocean's first lesson in intelligence is about perception. What you don't perceive isn't absent. It's just operating on a channel you haven't learned to dial into. And then there's the pressure. At the depths we're drifting toward, it's equivalent to having 50 jumbo jets stacked on your thumbnail. It's the defining physical characteristic of this realm. Our entire understanding of biology, of structure, of delicate neural circuitry is built in a comparative vacuum. The gentle, forgiving pressure of one atmosphere. We think of this pressure as a destructive force, a thing that crushes. And it does, if you're foolish enough to bring a polystyrene coffee cup down here. It gets shrunk into a perfect tiny thimble. But for life that belongs here, pressure isn't a bully, it's an architect. It shapes forms, it dictates chemistry. It forces solutions to problems of existence that we, in our fluffy atmospheric pillow, have never even had to consider. What kind of consciousness, what kind of thought could be forged in such a crucible? Not a faster one, not a brighter one, but perhaps a denser one, a more resilient one, a thought that doesn't flit like a mayfly but grows slowly, with immense gravity like a crystal. This is where we start our re-education, not with a revelation of some glittering underwater city, but with a quiet shift in perspective. We must unlearn our definition of quiet. We must stop seeing pressure as a limitation and start seeing it as a foundational element. The deep sea isn't a simpler place because it's dark and silent. It is phenomenally, bewilderingly complex. Its rules are just written in a dialect of physics and perception that our surface world brains are only beginning to sound out. So as you continue to sink, Let go of the idea that you're entering a void. You're not. You're floating into the middle of a conversation that has been going on for hundreds of millions of years. We're just late to the party, standing awkwardly by the metaphorical snack table, trying to figure out the rules of the game everyone else is playing. And the first rule is, listen differently. The universe down here isn't loud. It's just quiet in a way we're only starting to understand. You continue to sink, and as you do, the concept of time begins to soften at the edges. On the surface, time is a tyrant. It's measured in heartbeats, in the frantic scroll of a feed, in deadlines and ticking clocks. It's linear, urgent and demanding. But here, in this eternal midnight, time relaxes. It becomes something more fluid, more of a suggestion than a law. This brings us to our second cornerstone of misunderstood intelligence, the intelligence of patience. We worship speed, a faster processor, a quicker reaction time, a rapid-fire synaptic exchange. These are our metrics for a sharp mind. We've built our entire idea of smarts around the feverish metabolic hustle of a warm-blooded, oxygen-burning brain. But what if that's just one frenetic chapter in a much longer, much slower story? Think of the Greenland shark, a creature that might be swimming in these very depths you're drifting through. It can live for 4, maybe even 500 years. It doesn't reach sexual maturity until it's about 150. Let that settle for a moment. While a human lifetime is a frantic sprint from milestone to milestone, the Greenland shark's life is a geological meditation. What does it think about, if it thinks in the way we assume? Its brain isn't processing the social nuances of a conversation that happened 5 minutes ago, or anxiety about a project due next week. Its reality is one of cold water, the scent of a potential meal carried on a current that took weeks to arrive, the slow, powerful beat of a heart that may thump once every 10 seconds. Its intelligence, its awareness of its world, must be tuned to rhythms we would perceive as a near standstill. It's not dumb. It's operating on a different clock speed. Its consciousness is a long exposure, photograph, while ours is a series of frantic overlit snapshots. This intelligence of slowness extends beyond individuals to entire systems. Consider the voyage of a single nutrient. A particle of decomposing matter from a creature that died in the sunlit zone begins its long, slow fall. It can take weeks, months to finally settle on the abyssal plain, a journey of miles through the silent water column. Down there, a brittle star, a sea cucumber, or a peculiar translucent snail detects its arrival, not as an event, but as the gentle conclusion of a process that began an eternity ago. Their entire existence is an exercise in patient expectation, in being exquisitely tuned to the slow-motion rain of energy from a world they will never see. Their decision-making, when to move, when to feed, when to reproduce, isn't triggered by immediacy, but by the cumulative, slow fulfillment of a condition. It's the difference between reacting to a tap on the shoulder and responding to the gradual change of a season. Our brains are like hummingbirds, burning fuel at an incredible rate to maintain our constant high-resolution awareness. It's brilliant for outmaneuvering a predator on the savannah or composing a symphony, but it's also exhausting, and it creates a very specific, flickering kind of consciousness, one obsessed with the immediate past and the imminent future. The deep sea suggests another model, the intelligence of the redwood tree, which grows for millennia, or of the coral colony, which builds a mountain one tiny calcified cup at a time. It's an intelligence woven into the fabric of being over immense spans, rather than doing in frantic bursts. It might not think in sentences or images. It might think in gradients of chemistry, in the silent year-long completion of a metabolic pathway, in the patient alignment of its life cycle, with a current that circles the globe once every 1,000 years. So as the darkness holds you and the immense comforting weight of the water embraces you, let your own sense of time stretch. The thought you're having right now, don't rush it. Let it dissolve and reform. The deep isn't impressed by haste. Its most profound truths aren't revealed in a flash of insight, but in the slow accumulation of tiny consistent perceptions over epochs. We came down here looking for a brighter, more complex version of our own minds. What we're finding instead is a whisper that suggests our version of thinking is just one frantic dialect in a universe full of much slower, much quieter, and perhaps much wiser languages. This brings us to a resident that perfectly embodies this contradiction, a creature that seems to have arrived from a future we haven't imagined, or perhaps from a different evolutionary tree altogether. To meet it, we don't need to go to the very deepest trenches. We can linger in these mid-water realms where the last ghosts of light have faded, and here we might encounter the octopus. Now, you've heard about octopuses. They're the escape artists, the puzzle solvers, the masters of camouflage. But to label them as smart in our human-centric way is to miss the profound, quiet strangeness of what they actually represent. The octopus is our first best argument that everything we thought about deep-sea intelligence, indeed about intelligence period, might be wonderfully, bafflingly incomplete. Consider the architecture of your own consciousness for a moment. You have a command centre, a brain, tucked safely in a bony vault. It receives reports, sends out orders, and is the seat of you. It's a top-down corporation. The octopus laughs softly at this model. Its brain is more of a suggestion. Only about a third of its neurons are in its central brain. The other two-thirds, they're distributed in its arms. Each of those 8 powerful, infinitely flexible limbs has its own dense cluster of neurons, its own processing power. An arm can taste, can touch, can make decisions. It can continue to explore, to manipulate a shell, to search for food, even if severed from the central brain. This isn't just decentralization, this is a radical reimagining of self. What is it like to be an octopus? We can't truly know, but we can guess it's nothing like our unified narrated experience. It might be a chorus of semi-independent perceptions, a parliament of arms, each with its own interests and data, sending summarized reports to a central moderator that we call the brain. Its intelligence isn't located in a single point, it's embodied literally from suckers to siphon. When it changes colour and texture to perfectly mimic a rock covered in algae, it's not thinking about it in the way a painter would plan a brushstroke. Its skin sees and responds directly. Its thinking is as much in its skin as it is in its head. This challenges our deepest bias, that intelligence must be centralised, must have a throne room where the self sits. And then there's the solitude. The octopus is largely a solitary creature. It doesn't build complex social structures, teach its young, or pass down culture. By many of our traditional, anthropomorphic metrics for high intelligence, tool use, social learning, language, it should be a brilliant but limited oddity. Yet it solves novel problems with an ease that rivals primates. It gets bored, it plays, it has distinct personalities. It expresses what can only be called curiosity, that restless drive to explore and interact with its environment, for no reason other than to see what happens. This is profoundly important. It tells us that the spark of complex, flexible, curious consciousness doesn't require a social world to ignite it. It can arise from a silent, solitary conversation between an organism and the liquid universe it inhabits. Its culture is the water pressure, the taste of a crab, the texture of a coral ledge. Its teacher is direct physical experience. So as you drift, imagine for a moment having 8 minds, each one a skilled, sensing chemist, all loosely affiliated under the banner of you. Your thinking isn't a voice in your head, but a symphony of tactile intelligence, a constant flow of taste-touch data from 1,000 suckers. Your problem-solving isn't abstract planning, but a direct physical dialogue with a shell, a latch, a maze. You don't have a single point of view. You have a sphere of awareness. The octopus isn't just an animal with a neat trick. It's a living proof of concept for an entirely different way of being intelligent. It shows us that the deep ocean, and by extension the universe, has more than one recipe for a mindful existence. Our brain-in-a-box model is just one option. The octopus offers another, a distributed, embodied, deeply physical intelligence, a quiet reminder that the self doesn't have to be a castle. It can be a network. Leaving the fluid intelligence of the octopus behind, we sink a little deeper, to where the seafloor begins to rise in silent, sprawling monuments. Here, in the permanent cold and darkness, life has solved the problem of existence not with speed or muscle, but with glass and cooperation. We find forests, castles, and vast, intricate lattices, all built by creatures that seem to defy the very idea of an individual mind. We're entering the realm of the glass sponges, and they present us with another quiet contradiction. Can a city be intelligent? A single glass sponge, like the famous Venus's flower basket, is a masterpiece of biological engineering. It builds its skeleton not from calcium carbonate, like a coral, but from silica, the same material as window glass. It weaves this silica into an impossibly delicate, intricate latticework of fibres and spicules, a structure that is both incredibly strong and elegantly fluid, filtering microscopic food from the water, but that's just one individual. In certain places, like the reefs off the coast of British Columbia, these sponges don't just live alone. They grow together over centuries, forming reefs that can be tens of meters high and thousands of years old. These are not reefs of bright colour and bustling fish life. They are silent, pale, Gothic cathedrals built in the dark. Now, a sponge by itself is famously one of the simplest multicellular animals. It has no nervous system, no organs, no mouth even. It's essentially a colony of specialised cells working in harmony. It doesn't do anything in an active sense. It just is. It pumps water through its body, and its collar cells capture the passing nutrients. Where, in this simple, passive existence, could intelligence possibly reside? We have to zoom out. The intelligence of the glass sponge reef isn't in a single sponge, just as the intelligence of an ant colony isn't in a single ant. It's in the collective, in the architecture, in the slow, patient conversation between thousands of individuals across generations. The reef is a system. It modifies its environment. It creates complex three-dimensional habitat that shelters countless other species, from crustaceans to fish. It stabilizes the sea floor. It becomes a focal point for nutrient cycling in an otherwise barren landscape. The reef decides, in a purely evolutionary non-cognitive way, where to grow, how to structure itself to best catch the gentle deep-sea currents. This decision isn't made by a leader, but emerges from the simple rules followed by each individual sponge. Grow towards the current, connect with your neighbours for stability, build a structure that efficiently filters food. Out of these simple rules arises a breathtakingly complex, resilient whole. This is a different kind of deep-sea mind. It's not a brain, not even a distributed one like the octopus. It's a structural intelligence. The knowledge is baked into the form itself. The reef's memory is its physical shape, a record of centuries of water flow and sediment deposition. Its problem-solving is its growth pattern, constantly adapting to a changing environment over timescales no mortal animal could perceive. It doesn't think, it embodies a solution. It is a living testament to the idea that knowledge and adaptation can be stored not in neurons, but in morphology, in the silent, slow accretion of glass upon glass. As you drift over one of these silent, pale cities, consider what it means to be an intelligent system. We're so obsessed with the individual actor, the genius, the leader, the solitary thinker. The deep ocean quietly suggests that some of the most profound and stable intelligences on the planet are collectives. They think not with electricity and chemistry in a wet lump of tissue, but with growth and form over centuries. Their consciousness is the consciousness of a system in perfect, slow equilibrium with its world. It's a quiet, architectural mind, and it has been down here, building its glass libraries in the dark for far longer than our frantic, warm-blooded species has even existed. It doesn't need to be smart in our way. It simply needs to last. And in that lasting, in that patient collective persistence, it demonstrates a wisdom of an entirely different order. As we move away from the static, crystalline cities of glass, we enter a realm defined by movement. But a movement so vast and slow, it feels like stillness. We are in the grip of the deep ocean currents. These are not the surface waves whipped by wind, but the great ponderous rivers that flow within the sea itself, the thermohaline conveyor belt that cycles water, and with it, heat, salt, and life, around the globe over centuries. This brings us to a more abstract but no less potent idea: the memory of the current. Could the ocean itself, in its physical movements, hold a kind of intelligence, or at least a kind of knowledge that life has learned to read? Think of memory not as a neurological record, but as a pattern in the world. A scent on the wind carries the memory of a distant pine forest. A stone worn smooth holds the memory of a river that flowed for 1,000,000 years. The deep-sea currents are like that, but on a planetary scale. They are shaped by temperature and salinity, with thermo and haline of their name. Water cools at the poles, becomes saltier and denser, and sinks, beginning a journey that may take 1,000 years to complete, winding through the abyssal plains, sliding along continental shelves, before eventually upwelling, warmed and renewed, in distant seas. This journey is a physical story. The water carries the chemical signature of where it has been. Minerals from hydrothermal vents dissolved carbon from ancient marine snow, the faintest traces of metals scavenged from the deepest basins. For the creatures of the deep, these currents are not just highways, they are libraries. A young eel, hatched in the Sargasso Sea, doesn't have a map. It has a chemical sensitivity tuned to the specific scent profile of the water that flows from the continent it has never seen. It follows this scent memory, a gradient written in the current, to find its freshwater home. A whale navigating the featureless deep may listen to the sound of these currents moving over different seafloor topography, using the low-frequency hum as an acoustic guide. The larval forms of countless deep-sea animals, tiny, fragile things, are at the mercy of these flows. Their decision of where to settle is a dialogue between their own biology and the whispered instructions of the current's chemical and physical text. They are reading a book written in density and salinity, a narrative of planetary circulation. This journey is a physical story. The water carries the chemical signature of where it has been. Minerals from hydrothermal vents, dissolved carbon from ancient marine snow, the faintest traces of metals scavenged from the deepest basins. For the creatures of the deep, these currents are not just highways, they are libraries. A young eel, hatched in the Sargasso Sea, doesn't have a map. It has a chemical sensitivity tuned to the specific scent profile of the water that flows from the continent it has never seen. It follows this scent memory, a gradient written in the current, to find its freshwater home. A whale navigating the featureless deep may listen to the sound of these currents moving over different seafloor topography, using the low-frequency hum as an acoustic guide. The larval forms of countless deep-sea animals, tiny, fragile things, are at the mercy of these flows. Their decision of where to settle is a dialogue between their own biology and the whispered instructions of the current's chemical and physical text. They are reading a book written in density and salinity, a narrative of planetary circulation. This is environmental intelligence. The knowledge necessary for survival isn't stored solely in genes or learned behaviour, it's embedded in the world itself. The current remembers the shape of the continents. It remembers the meltwater of glaciers from 1,000 years ago. It remembers the pulse of the vents, and life has evolved to be exquisitely literate in this language. We, with our GPS and printed charts, have largely made ourselves illiterate to this kind of knowledge. We've externalized memory onto devices, but in the deep sea, memory is internal to the system. An organism succeeds by how well it can listen to and interpret the long, slow story the water is telling. So as you feel the imagined gentle tug of this immense lazy river in the deep, consider what it means. You're floating inside a planetary circulatory system that also functions as a communal memory bank. The intelligence here is distributed even further than the sponge reef. It's in the interaction between the physics of water, the chemistry of salts, and the biological sensors of the creatures that live within it. There is no thinker, only a constant, slow reading of a world that is perpetually writing its own autobiography. The deep-sea creature doesn't need to hold a perfect internal model of the ocean. It swims inside the model. Its mind is in part the current itself. Its thoughts are adjustments to pressure gradients. Its decisions are turns into sweeter or saltier streams. It's a form of cognition so integrated with the environment that it blurs the line between the thinker and the world it thinks about. And in that blurring, it suggests a truth far older and quieter than our own brilliant, isolated consciousness. That sometimes, the smartest thing to do is to listen to the universe remembering itself. In this absolute darkness, the next language reveals itself not through sound or current, but through light. But not the light you know. This is borrowed light, living light created from the body itself, bioluminescence. It is the most common form of communication on the planet, if you measure by volume of habitat. And while we often see it as a simple spectacle, a starry sky mirrored in the deep, what if we've misunderstood this too? What if these flashes and glows and shimmering veils are not just signals, but the components of a slow, complex conversation, a dialogue in a temporal dimension we struggle to perceive? You float, and your eyes slowly adjust. At first, it's just the occasional pinprick, a lone blue-green spark drifting by. Then, a wave of soft, ethereal light pulses through a distant jellyfish, like a thought made visible. A shrimp expels a cloud of glowing particles, a dazzling smoke screen. The triggerfish, with its array of light organs, paints a pattern on its belly that mimics the faint downwelling light from above, erasing its shadow. This isn't random. It's a grammar, but it's a grammar of patience and immense distances. A flash might mean, I am here, or I am dangerous, or I am looking for you. But in the vast, sound-conducting yet visually limited expanse of the deep, these messages aren't chatted back and forth in rapid succession. They are broadcast. A creature may flash once and wait for minutes, for hours. The reply, if it comes, may arrive from 100 meters away, delayed by the cautious calculus of predation and attraction. Consider the lonely search for a mate in a continent-sized emptiness. Some species of deep-sea fish have solved this with bioluminescent ID tags, specific patterns of light organs that are unique to their species, even their sex. A male will flash his pattern into the void. He is not calling into a crowded room. He is casting a single, hopeful sentence into a novel and waiting weeks for a paragraph in return. The conversation is so slow, so stretched by space and caution, that to our accelerated minds it would look like isolated, unrelated events. We see a flash here, a glow there, and we catalogue them as separate phenomena. But what if they are connected? What if the pulse of a jellyfish 10 minutes ago was a response to the shimmer of a siphonophore an hour before that, which was triggered by the distant chemical sigh of a whale full days earlier? We are witnessing snippets of a dialogue that unfolds on a timescale of deep-sea currents, not human conversation. This languid pace changes the very nature of the communication. There is no room for haste or nuance. Each emission must be energy efficient, clear, and loaded with meaning. It's more like sending a carefully composed letter by sailing ship than sending a text message. The intelligence here is in the efficiency of the code and the exquisite sensitivity to receive it. A predator like the viperfish uses a bioluminescent lure on the tip of a long fin ray. It doesn't just wiggle it, it manipulates the light, making it pulse in a specific rhythm that mimics the distress glow of a particular prey animal. This is deception, a lie written in light. It requires an understanding, an inherited evolutionary understanding, of what another creature expects to see. It's a form of social manipulation in a world where most individuals never truly socialize. So, as you watch these silent, slow-motion fireworks in the eternal night, reframe what you're seeing. You're not looking at pretty lights. You are looking at the slow, careful words of a language spoken across miles and months. You're witnessing a society where relationships are built not on constant interaction, but on rare, luminous, and profoundly significant encounters. The deep sea's bioluminescent dialogue suggests that complex communication, even social intelligence, doesn't require chatter. It can be built on profound patience, on the ability to hold a thought, a glowing, biological thought, and cast it into the darkness, trusting that the right listener, in its own slow time, will understand. All these examples, the distributed octopus, the architectural sponge, the literate current follower, the patient light speaker, point to a recurring theme that our surface world minds have a stubborn, almost comical blind spot towards. We are obsessed with the single brain, the command module, the CEO of the body. We look for intelligence and we instinctively look for the head, the central processing unit, the place where the I supposedly lives. It's a deeply ingrained bias, born from our own biology and reinforced by centuries of philosophy and technology. But the deep ocean, in its quiet, relentless way, is a gallery of evidence suggesting this may be a terribly narrow way to see the world. The problem isn't with deep-sea life. The problem is with our love affair with central control. Think about how we've built our own world. Our governments, our corporations, our computer systems. For most of history, they've been hierarchical pyramids. A king, a boss, a CPU, even our stories revolve around the singular hero, the brilliant detective, the genius in the garret. This model is so baked into us that we project it onto everything. We used to think the sun revolved around the earth. We think consciousness must revolve around a brain. But what if consciousness, or a workable, effective analogue of it, can be a network without a boss, a democracy of cells, a consensus reached by a colony? The deep sea is full of such consensus. This bias makes us misunderstand what we see. We find a creature like the jellyfish, with no central brain, and we historically filed it under simple, primitive, a mere reflex machine. We saw the sponge as little more than a rock that filters. We struggled to explain octopus intelligence because we kept trying to locate it in its central brain, which is only part of the story. We are like someone trying to understand the internet by studying a single server in a data center, ignoring the vast distributed network that gives it meaning. We want the throne, but in the deep, many systems have done away with the throne entirely. Power, processing power, decision-making power, is shared, fluid, and situational. This isn't just a biological curiosity, it's a different organisational principle for being alive. A centralised system is fast and decisive, but it has a single point of failure. Take out the brain, and the organism dies. Take out the king, and the kingdom descends into chaos. But a distributed system, it's resilient. An octopus arm can be damaged, and the system adapts. A sponge in a reef dies, and the structure, the collective intelligence, persists. A siphonophore, a creature we'll meet soon, can lose parts of its colonial body and continue functioning. Their intelligence is not a flame in a lantern, easily snuffed. It's more like a pattern in a flowing stream. You can disrupt a part of it, but the pattern re-establishes itself around the obstacle. So, as you drift here in the silent dark, it's worth examining this bias in yourself. Your own consciousness feels singular, unified, and located right behind your eyes, is the most undeniable truth of your existence. But the deep ocean whispers that this might just be one flavour of experience, one solution to the problem of coordinating a complex body in a complex world. It's a brilliant solution, but not the only one. The quiet, relentless pressure of the abyss has fostered other solutions. Intelligence as a conversation between parts, intelligence as physical form, intelligence as an emergent property of a collective. None are better than ours, but they are profoundly, meaningfully different. And their existence challenges the very core of what we thought we knew about minds. It suggests that the universe, when left to its own devices in the dark, doesn't always build a captain for the ship. Sometimes it makes the ship itself the captain. To see this leaderless intelligence in action, we need only turn our attention to one of the most common, yet perpetually misunderstood, residents of these midwaters, the jellyfish. It is the poster child for brainless, and that's exactly why it's so important. The jellyfish, in its pulsing, drifting grace, is a living proof that complex, successful behaviour can emerge from a network so simple it makes our own neural wiring look like bureaucratic overkill. It solves the fundamental problems of survival, navigation, feeding, predation avoidance, without a single central command. It is intelligence, distilled to its most essential networked form. Consider the moon jelly, a ghostly, saucer-shaped pulse in the darkness. It has no brain, no heart, no lungs. What it has is a nerve net, a decentralized mesh of neurons spread throughout its epidermis, like a smart fabric. There is no headquarters. Stimulus in one part of the bell triggers a local response that radiates out. Through the net coordinating the entire organism, touch a tentacle, and the whole bell contracts to swim away. It's not thinking about escaping. The escape is the thought. The action and the decision are the same event, distributed across its entire being. This is cognition stripped of narrative, of internal dialogue. It is pure embodied response. But to call this mere reflex is to sell it short. Observe a jellyfish navigating. It can sense light with simple eye spots, gravity with tiny statocysts, little balancing stones, and chemicals in the water. Using only its nerve net, it integrates this data. It will pulse to move toward faint light, often up toward the surface at night to feed, or away from harsh light. It can maintain its depth in a current. It can find areas richer in plankton. This is problem solving. It's taking sensory input about the world and producing adaptive, goal-directed behaviour. The goal isn't conceived in a mind's eye. It's written into the wiring. The jellyfish is a living algorithm. Its body the hardware running an elegant, efficient code for being a jellyfish. This model of intelligence, the network, is incredibly robust. You can cut a jellyfish in half, and in some species each half can regenerate into a new, complete animal. There is no essential self to kill because the self is the pattern of the network. Damage is just a reconfiguration of the circuit. This is a profound lesson from the deep. Our kind of intelligence with its cherished sense of self and centralized memory is fragile. A stroke, a trauma, and we can be lost. The jellyfish's intelligence is resilient because it is nowhere, and thus everywhere in its form. Its knowledge is literally in its flesh. So as one of these gelatinous ghosts pulses past you, its bell contracting with a slow, rhythmic grace, don't see a simpleton. see a masterclass in minimalist cognition. It is solving the equations of existence with an elegance our bulky, energy-hungry brains can only envy from a distance. It reminds us that intelligence doesn't require a story, doesn't require an I. It can be a beautiful, self-sustaining pattern of stimulus and response, a dance between a living network and the liquid world. The jellyfish isn't dreaming of being something more. It has perfected the art of being exactly what it is, using a mind that is so diffused, so integrated with its body, that the very question of where its intelligence is becomes meaningless. It is a quiet, pulsing testament to the idea that sometimes the smartest system is the one with no leader at all. Beneath us now, the true seafloor emerges from the gloom, not as a bare, rocky plain, but as a soft, undulating landscape of sediment. It looks inert, like a vast, forgotten desert at the bottom of the world. But this is our next great misunderstanding. The abyssal sediment is not a passive blanket, it is a recorder, a librarian. It is, in its own slow chemical way, a keeper of time and memory. If the currents are the ocean's circulating knowledge, and bioluminescence its fleeting conversation, then the sediment is its long-term archive, and the creatures that live within it are not just inhabitants, they are curators, constantly reading and writing in this living library. Think of the sediment as a book being written one infinitesimally fine grain at a time. Each layer is a page. A page can contain the siliceous shells of long-dead diatoms, the calcium carbonate fragments of microscopic foraminifera, the black soot from a forest fire on a continent thousands of miles away that fell from the sky centuries ago, the metallic nodules that grew around a speck of organic matter over millions of years. This is a physical record, but it's also a biological one. Buried within these layers are cells, bacteria, archaea, in states of suspended animation, so slow they're barely alive, persisting for millennia. The sediment isn't just dirt, it's a dense, cold, slow-motion ecosystem. Its metabolism is measured in geological time. Now consider the life that specialises in interacting with this archive. The sea cucumber, looking like a lethargic, fleshy sausage, is actually a relentless editor. It ingests the sediment, mouth to anus, digesting the tiny, edible fraction of organic matter within it, and redepositing the cleaned sand behind it. It is filtering, mixing, and aerating the pages of the library. It's a living plough, turning over the pages so the story can continue. Or the delicate, many-legged isopod that scuttles across the surface, its antennae tasting the most recent deposits of marine snow, reading the headline news of the water column above. Or the burrowing worm that constructs elaborate mucus-lined tunnels, its very architecture changing the chemical diffusion rates in the sediment, creating microenvironments for other microbes. These creatures are not just eating dirt, they're engaging in a deep, slow dialogue with the archive. Their movements, their feeding, their very existence become part of the record. A worm's burrow, filled in over centuries, becomes a fossilized trace of its behavior, a thought preserved in geology. The collective churning of the seafloor community known as bioturbation is a form of editing. It prevents the archive from becoming a static, layered tomb. It keeps it alive, mixing old and new, allowing chemical conversations between layers that would otherwise be separated by eons. So, as you hover above this seemingly lifeless plane, reframe your view. You're looking at a dynamic, living memory system. The intelligence here is not in any single organism's brain, but in the system's ability to store information, in chemical gradients, in fossilized layers, in the persistent spark of deep subsurface microbes, and to have that information actively processed by the life that dwells there. The seafloor doesn't have a mind, but it has a memory that is constantly being accessed, rewritten, and organized by its inhabitants. It's a collective, externalized knowledge base, and every creature that crawls, burrows, or filters upon it is both a scholar and an author, contributing to a text that is written not in words, but in the very stuff of the earth itself. It is the ocean's quiet, patient way of remembering, and it has been doing so since long before the first neuron ever fired. From the slow memory of the sediment, we are drawn to one of the most profound events in the deep-sea calendar, the whale fall. Imagine the largest creature in our world, a blue whale, ending its life at the surface and beginning its final, slow descent. It can take hours for its colossal body to sink through the miles of water, a great shadow falling through the twilight into the absolute dark. When it finally comes to rest on the abyssal plain, it is not an ending, it is a genesis. The carcass is not a corpse. It is a sudden, miraculous island of concentrated energy in a world of starvation. And the way life organises around it is a masterclass in what we might call orchestrated ecological intelligence. The whalefall goes through distinct slow-motion phases, each with its own cast of specialised characters. First, the mobile scavengers arrive. Sleeper sharks, giant isopods the size of house cats, hagfish in writhing knots. They descend in a frenzy that can last up to 2 years, stripping the soft tissue in a controlled, relentless harvest. This is the bloom phase, a sudden, violent influx of activity. But even this chaos has a quiet order. Different species work on different tissues, at different times, in a sequence so predictable it feels planned. Then, as the skeleton is revealed, the second phase begins. This is when the true specialists move in. Polychaete worms, looking like red, fuzzy caterpillars, blanket the bones, feeding on the lipids and oils trapped within. But the true architects are the bacteria. Colonies of chemosynthetic bacteria begin to bloom on the bones, especially in the marrow, metabolizing the sulfur from the whale's lipids and creating a dense microbial mat. This mat in turn supports a whole ecosystem of smaller creatures, snails, clams, more worms, who farm the bacteria or feed directly on it. The skeleton becomes a self-sustaining, leaking reef of chemical energy. This entire process, from scavenging frenzy to bacterial garden, can sustain a complex shifting community for decades, up to 50 years, sometimes more. What we are witnessing is not a random feeding frenzy. It's a programmed ecological succession. As intricate and staged as the regrowth of a forest after a fire, the intelligence is not in any one creature, but in the collective script written by evolution. Each species has a role, an arrival time, a departure cue. They don't know the script, of course. They are simply following their ingrained biological programming, but together they execute a complex long-term project, the efficient total recycling of a giant. The whalefall becomes a temporary pulsating node of life and information in the abyss. It is a lesson in resource management on a scale and time frame that dwarfs human industry. Nothing is wasted. Energy is transferred from the largest scale to the smallest, with ruthless, patient efficiency. It demonstrates a systemic intelligence where the plan is distributed across hundreds of species and encoded in their very instincts. The deep sea doesn't do waste. It does transformation. The whale's body, its final gift, is a curriculum, and an entire graduating class of deep-sea life knows instinctively how to study it, chapter by slow chapter. So, as you picture this great Leviathan's final resting place, don't see a grave. See a university. See a sudden, brilliant conference where every attendee knows exactly what to present and when. The intelligence on display is the intelligence of the cycle itself, the deep ocean's ancient, flawless logic of return and renewal. It is a quiet, powerful reminder that what we see as an end is often, in a different, slower language, a magnificent and orchestrated beginning. Throughout this journey, we've treated pressure as a condition, a fact of the deep-sea environment. But what if we've been thinking of it backwards? We see it as a limitation, a crushing force that life must withstand. But for the beings that call this place home, pressure isn't a jailer. It's the fundamental sculptor of their reality. It is the quiet, omnipotent artist that has shaped their every form, their chemistry, and perhaps the very nature of their awareness. To understand deep-sea intelligence, we must stop seeing pressure as a barrier and start seeing it as a creative, even cognitive force. At these depths, pressure does curious things. It forces molecules closer together, it changes how proteins fold, how cell membranes function, how enzymes catalyze reactions. Life here isn't just tolerating this. It's built from the ground up to require it. The fatty membranes of a surface fish's cells would be rigid and dysfunctional here. A deep-sea creature's membranes are fluid, flexible, designed to operate under the squeeze. This is more than adaptation. It's a complete reimagining of biochemistry at a fundamental level. The pressure hasn't just shaped the animal's body, it has written the rules of its cellular existence. Its very aliveness is a product of pressure. Now extend that idea to consciousness. Our thoughts are, at their base, electrochemical gradients, ions flowing across membranes, neurotransmitters crossing synapses. It's a delicate, watery ballet that works perfectly at one atmosphere. But under hundreds of atmospheres, that ballet changes. The physics of signal propagation are different. The speed of thought, if we can call it that, might be altered. The very texture of neural processing could be denser, more viscous. We cannot know what it is like to have a brain that evolved under such conditions, but we can speculate that its experience of reality, its perception of time, its integration of sensory input, will be fundamentally shaped by the constant embracing force surrounding it. Its consciousness would be a pressurized consciousness. Consider the barrel-eye fish with its transparent head and tubular eyes that look straight up. Those eyes are under immense pressure, yet they are exquisitely sensitive to the faintest speck of bioluminescent light from above. The pressure hasn't limited its vision. It has necessitated a vision system of incredible strength and specialization, or the snailfish of the Hadal trenches, with bodies so gelatinous they seem barely solid. They are not weak, they are perfectly matched. Their lack of rigid structures isn't a deficit, but a brilliant concession to the sculptor's will. They go with the flow, literally, letting the pressure pass through them rather than fighting it. This reframing is crucial. We look at the bizarre, often gelatinous and simple forms of the deep sea and mistakenly see primitive simplicity. But what we are seeing is elegance under constraint. The intelligence of these forms isn't expressed in complex manipulation or social structures, but in the sheer, silent genius of biochemical and structural engineering. Their smartness is in their existential efficiency. They have solved the ultimate problem: how to be under conditions that would instantly annihilate us. That solution is written into every fibre of their being. So, as you feel the imagined total embrace of the abyssal pressure, consider it not as a weight, but as a medium. Like water to a fish, it is the element in which they think and move. Their intelligence is not divorced from this force, it is because of it. The pressure has been the teacher, the evolutionary editor, the constant creative partner. It has whispered, for eons, this is possible, this is not, try this shape, this chemistry, and life has listened. What has emerged is a consciousness that doesn't merely exist despite the crushing dark, but because of it. It is a mind forged in the deep, quiet workshop of the world. As we drift, a new form emerges from the dark, one that blurs the line we cling to so desperately. The line between individual and collective. It moves with a single, fluid, purposeful grace, a long, luminous chain or a delicate, floating bell. This is the siphonophore, perhaps the greatest argument the deep ocean makes for redefining the self. It looks like one animal. It moves like one animal. But it is in fact a colony of thousands of highly specialized individuals called zooids, all descended from a single fertilized egg. The siphonophore is not an it. It is a they that has learned to act as an it. And in that unity we see a different kind of mindful purpose. The most famous might be the Praia dubia, a creature that can grow longer than a blue whale, yet is as delicate as a feather. Or the bioluminescent nanomere, pulsing through the water like a string of fairy lights. Each zooid in the colony is morphologically distinct, a specialized tool. Some are for propulsion, rhythmically contracting to move the entire colony, living pistons in a gelatinous engine. Some are for feeding, with stinging tentacles to capture prey, their microscopic harpoons unfurling with a swiftness that belies the colony's gentle drift. Others are for reproduction, little sacs of future life. Others are for sensing the environment, tasting the water for the chemical signature of a meal or a threat. But they are all physically connected, sharing a common stem, a common circulatory system, a shared river of nutrients and signals. They are, in essence, organs of a larger distributed body. But there is no central brain, no command center. Coordination emerges from the simple, elegant interactions between the zooids, a conversation written in chemistry and electricity. How does something with no captain sail so purposefully? The intelligence is in the protocol, the pre-programmed harmony. A stimulus, the scent of food, a changing current, detected by one zooid can trigger a cascade of responses through the colony, via chemical or nervous signals along the shared stem. The feeding zooids might orient, their tentacles fanning out like a net. The swimming zooids pulse in a new direction, their coordinated contractions a gentle, wave-like push. The colony responds as one because its parts are designed from the genetic blueprint to work as one. It is a democracy where every citizen has a single, fixed job, and the outcome of their collective work is a coherent, behaving superorganism. There are no debates, no dissent, only the flawless execution of a shared genetic mandate. This challenges our notion of individual will. Where does the decision to turn left reside? Not in a leader, but in the emergent sum of local reactions. It is decision the way a flock of birds turns. No leader, just simple rules followed by each individual leading to breathtaking collective intelligence. The siphonophore has simply made this collective permanent, physical and specialized. Its mind is the architecture of its body. Its purpose, to feed, to move, to reproduce, is the shared singular purpose of every zooid because they are genetically identical clones. They are not serving a queen, they are the queen, the ship and the crew all at once. They are a society that is physically fused, trading the chaos of individual agency for the serene, devastating efficiency of a single unified being. Watching a siphonophore is like watching a symphony performed by an instrument that is also the orchestra. Each note is a living, breathing musician, permanently attached to their neighbour, playing only one perfect tone for a lifetime. The melody that results is the siphonophore's graceful predatory drift. It is a lesson in unity and specialization so complete that the very question of individuality becomes moot. For us, a body is a collection of cells that are all us. They share our genome and die with us. For the siphonophore, the equivalent of our cells are themselves tiny, complete animals, yet they achieve a cohesion that rivals our own bodily integrity. It represents a path evolution took where cooperation wasn't just a strategy, it became the organism. The individual was not just sacrificed for the greater good, it was rewired, rebuilt and redefined until the greater good was the individual. So as this living necklace of purpose glides past, consider what it means for a will to exist. The siphonophore's will is not a voice in a neural centre. It is the silent, unanimous agreement of 10,000 connected selves to be oneself. It is a quiet, flowing proof that intelligence and purpose can be a collective property, a shared project so seamless that the seams dissolve. In the deep sea's dark solitude, under pressures that would crush a submarine, it found that the answer to the challenge of existence wasn't to become a more complex individual, but to become a perfect, silent consensus. It whispers a profound and unsettling truth, that the I we hold so sacred is not the only way to be. There is another way to navigate the dark, not as a solitary soul, but as a chorus, a colony, a single thought made flesh 10,000 times over. In this realm of perpetual night, another one of our surface assumptions begins to unravel, not with a snap, but with the slow, inexorable pull of a deep-sea current. We've touched on the patience of deep-sea life, but we must go deeper into the substrate of experience itself, our relationship with time. It's not just that creatures here are slow, though they often are. It's that the very perception of time, the experience of its passage, may be a different kind of river for them. Could a creature that lives under constant pressure, in constant darkness, with a metabolism often slowed to a geological crawl, perceive the seconds, minutes, and hours in the same frantic linear sequence that we do? The deep ocean suggests, quietly but insistently, that our ticking clock is just one rhythm, a brisk staccato allegro. In a grand, cosmic symphony of temporal possibilities, down here, the music is mostly adagio, and some of it is so slow our ears can't even recognize it as a tune. Think of metabolism as a metronome, setting the tempo for an organism's entire existence. On the surface, a hummingbird's metronome is set to a blistering prestissimo, its heart a frantic blur, its life a high-energy buzz from flower to flower. Now, sink your imagination down to the abyssal plain. Here, a deep-sea grenadier fish, with its large head and tapering tail, moves with a languid, almost reluctant grace. Its metronome is set to a largo so profound it's almost a single, sustained note. Its muscles are pale, built not for explosive bursts but for efficient, sustained cruising over vast, empty distances. Its cells work at a lower, cooler pace, a biochemical consensus achieved in the permanent chill of 2 degrees Celsius. If consciousness, the subjective feeling of being, is tied to the speed of internal processes, to the rate of neural firing and the turnover of signaling chemicals, then the grenadier's inner world might be a drawn-out meditative expanse compared to our frenetic, overlit slideshow. A minute of our surface-time anxiety might feel to its senses like a contemplative hour, an event we perceive as sudden and chaotic. The frenzied arrival of sleeper sharks at a whale fall might, to its perception, unfold with a slow, predictable, almost elegant inevitability, like a cloud shadow crossing a mountain over the course of a day. Think of metabolism as a metronome, setting the tempo for an organism's entire existence. On the surface, a hummingbird's metronome is set to a blistering prestissimo, its heart a frantic blur, its life a high-energy buzz from flower to flower. Now, sink your imagination down to the abyssal plain. Here, a deep-sea grenadier fish, with its large head and tapering tail, moves with a languid, almost reluctant grace. Its metronome is set to a largo so profound, it's almost a single, sustained note. Its muscles are pale, built not for explosive bursts but for efficient, sustained cruising over vast, empty distances. Its cells work at a lower, cooler pace, a biochemical consensus achieved in the permanent chill of 2 degrees Celsius. If consciousness, the subjective feeling of being, is tied to the speed of internal processes, to the rate of neural firing and the turnover of signalling chemicals, then the grenadier's inner world might be a drawn-out meditative expanse compared to our frenetic, overlit slideshow. A minute of our surface-time anxiety might feel to its senses like a contemplative hour, an event we perceive as sudden and chaotic. The frenzied arrival of sleeper sharks at a whalefall might, to its perception, unfold with a slow, predictable, almost elegant inevitability, like a cloud shadow crossing a mountain over the course of a day. But this isn't just about being sluggish or living in slow motion. That's still seeing time through our frame, just at a lower speed. This is about living in an environment where the external cues that define and segment time for us are utterly absent. No sunrise, no sunset, no dappled light through leaves, no rapid change from dry to wet, from hot to cold. The primary rhythms of the deep are vastly, almost incomprehensibly longer. They are the slow pulse of hydrothermal vent plumes, shifting over decades as mineral chimneys grow and collapse. They are the seasonal flux of marine snow from the sunlit world above, a pulse that is itself dampened and stretched into a faint, constant drizzle by the time it reaches the abyss. They are the millennial cycling of the great ocean conveyor belts, moving water masses older than human civilization. When your world only meaningfully changes on a scale of weeks, years, or centuries, what evolutionary use is there for a nervous system, optimized to notice the flicker of a shadow, the sudden swoop of a predator? It would be like using a strobe light to read the erosion of a canyon. Deep sea time is macro time. Their neurology is likely tuned to detect the barely there, a slight increase in the concentration of a particular amino acid over the course of 12 hours, an imperceptible warming of the water by 1/10 of a degree over 3 days, the subtle strengthening of a current's chemical signature over a week. Their reality is one of gradients, not events. Now, apply this radically different temporal scale to the very architecture of perception and memory. Our human memories are like a meticulously organised photo album, time-stamped and placed in a linear narrative. This happened, then that happened. Our sense of self is a story we tell ourselves, a string of sequenced moments. But if your perception of then is stretched over hours, if your most significant sensory inputs are changes measured in parts per billion per day, then your memory might not be a series of discrete snapshots. It might be a blended, slow-changing impression, like a watercolour left in the rain. The memory of a successful meal might not be a vivid snapshot of lunging and capturing prey. It might be a long sensory tapestry, the first faint whisper of a lipid compound on the current 6 hours ago, the patient, energy-conserving turn into the strengthening scent corridor, the gradual resolution of that scent into the specific vibrational hum of a wounded crustacean, the final, slow-motion encounter. There now might contain far more of what we would categorically call the past, because the past, in the form of a dissipating chemical trail or a lingering localized temperature anomaly from a creature's passage, is still physically present and detectable in their environment, for far longer than in our world of wind and evaporation. Their present moment is thicker, more cumulative. Consider the humble sea urchin, creeping across the abyssal sediment. It might detect a patch of nutritious microbes. Its movement towards it isn't a decisive scamper. It is a slow, tectonic shift, a reallocation of hydraulic pressure in its tube feet over the course of an afternoon. Is it thinking about the food the whole time? In our sense, probably not. But its entire system is engaged in a sustained, directed response to a stimulus that would have vanished in minutes in our world. Its decision to move is not a point in time, but a process in time. The thinking is the moving. This has profound implications for what we might call their intelligence of time. The deep-sea creature isn't juggling appointments, it is integrating a signal. Its cognitive success isn't measured by quick reaction, but by accurate summation. It needs to correctly answer not what just happened, but what has been happening, and what does that suggest will continue to happen. Its mind is a filter for permanence in a seemingly static world, designed to extract the tiny true signal of opportunity or threat from the immense quiet noise of the deep. It is an intelligence of pattern recognition on a scale we would find paralyzingly slow. So as you float here in this timeless dark, try to let your own programmed sense of time dissolve. Feel the imagined urgency leak out of your thoughts. The deep sea doesn't ignore time, it obeys a different clock. One wound by the geothermal heartbeat of the planet and the cosmic patience of chemistry, not by the spinning of a planet toward a star. The intelligence that evolves here isn't pressed by deadlines. It's sculpted by the patient, relentless need to integrate signals over long durations. It is an intelligence of summation, not reaction. A consciousness that exists in this environment might not spend its energy asking, what happened next? But rather, what is the enduring state of things? It is a mindfulness not of moments, but of conditions, of equilibrium. And in that it offers a serene, almost unthinkable contrast to our own existence. For us, time is a river, and we are swept along in its current, desperately trying to navigate the rapids, grabbing at memories floating past on the banks. For a creature of the deep, time might not be a river at all. It might be the ocean itself, vast, still, and suspending. They are not carried by it, they are held within it. Their awareness is not a leaf riding the current, but the water molecule, part of the medium, feeling the slow, immense pull of tides they will never see. This is the final, quiet unravelling of our assumption that time passes. Down here, it just is. And in that infinite quiet is, a different kind of mind can grow. One not built for the chase, but for the endless, gentle float. Our journey through these quiet minds would be incomplete without listening to one of the deep ocean's most constant, fundamental voices. Not a creature, but a geological feature. We approach a hydrothermal vent field, a place that should, by all surface logic, be a hellscape. Superheated water, laden with toxic metals and sulphur, billows from chimneys of molten minerals, creating a landscape that looks more like an alien forge than a cradle for life. And yet, it teems with it. Giant tube worms, blind shrimp, ghostly white crabs. But before we meet them, we must listen to the sound. Beneath the crackle of superheated water meeting near freezing ocean, there is a hum, a persistent low-frequency vibration from the venting fluid and the shifting crust. This is not noise. This, we might speculate, is the foundational rhythm of one of the planet's most isolated civilizations, a steady pulse that may underpin a unique form of awareness. Life at the vents doesn't just tolerate extremes, it is built by them. It runs not on sunlight, but on chemosynthesis. Bacteria here use the hydrogen sulfide from the vent fluid, a poison to most life, as their energy source, just as plants use sunlight. These bacteria form the base of an entire food web that is utterly independent of the sun-driven world above. This is a biological singularity, a separate tree of life's economy, and it has existed in the dark, under immense pressure, for billions of years, potentially since life began. The intelligence that evolves in such a system is born from a different set of first principles. Consider the giant tube worm, Riftia pachyptila. It has no mouth, no gut. It survives through a symbiotic partnership with chemosynthetic bacteria that live inside its body. The worm provides the bacteria with chemicals from the vent fluid, which it absorbs through a specialized organ, and the bacteria feed the worm. The worm's entire existence is an act of profound embodied collaboration. Its intelligence is not about finding food, but about maintaining a perfect, delicate equilibrium, positioning its plume just right in the vent's chemical gradient, not too hot, not too toxic, just right for its internal partners. Its mind, if we can call it that, is dedicated to the science of balance within a chaotic flow. The constant physical rhythm of the vents, the heat, the pulse, the hum, may act as a sensory anchor for this life. In a world without light, without the sun's rhythm, the vent's output becomes the heartbeat of the local world. Organisms may synchronize their behaviors, their metabolic rates, even their reproductive cycles to this geothermal pulse. Their sense of time and place is tied not to a celestial body, but to the breathing of the earth itself. This creates a consciousness rooted in geochemistry, a mind whose primary relationship is with planetary interior processes, not surface weather. So, as you hover at the edge of this shimmering metallic plume, reframe it. See it not as a bleak extremity, but as a hearth, the first hearth. The hum is its song. The bizarre, specialized creatures are its citizens, living in a tight, silent dialogue with the planet's core. Their intelligence is the intelligence of integration, integrating a toxic chemical into their very body plan, integrating a bacterial partner into their self, integrating the violent rhythms of the earth into the pace of their lives. They are not outliers. They are perhaps our oldest cousins, reminders of life's original tenacious spark in the dark. Their existence whispers that consciousness doesn't need a sunny, gentle world to flourish. It can arise in the deepest dark at the hottest crack, listening to the oldest song there is, the slow, steady hum of a living planet. We have drifted through the languages of light, the architectures of glass, the schools of patience, and the symphonies of collective will. We have felt the creative weight of pressure and listened to the memory and currents. We have visited cities without mayors and met minds without centres. Each stop has been a gentle correction, a quiet nudge away from a single, human-shaped idea of what it means to be intelligent, to be aware, to think. Now, as we begin our slow ascent back towards the world of light and air, we must synthesize this journey, not to arrive at a new, rigid definition to replace the old one, but to learn how to hold a softer, more generous question. What if intelligence is not a thing to be found, but a conversation to be heard? The deep ocean doesn't offer a rival model to our brain-centric intelligence. It offers a spectrum. At one end, the sheer, silent genius of structural solution, the sponge reef, the siphonophores consensus. In the middle, the distributed embodied dialogue, the octopus, the jellyfish's nerve net, and woven throughout, the profound systemic wisdom of environmental integration, the whale fool's recycling liturgy, the vent community's chemical harmony. None of these are less than. They're all brilliant, optimized answers to the same fundamental question. How does a living system persist and navigate a complex world? Our answer was a fast, centralized processor. Theirs were different, quieter, often slower, built from different materials under different rules. This redefines the conversation we should be having. The goal is not to prove the deep sea is smart by our standards. The goal is to learn to appreciate the myriad dialects of awareness spoken in the dark. It is to understand that consciousness might not be a light switch either on or off. It might be a dimmer with countless settings, or perhaps a prism, fracturing into diverse expressions of being. The deep-sea creature's thought might be a year-long chemical gradient. Its decision might be the growth of its shell in a particular direction. Its memory might be the path of a current it has sensed for generations. This is not lesser thought. It is thought written in a different medium. So, what have we learned? We've learned that intelligence can be patient. It can be collective. It can be embodied in limbs or in the very structure of a home. It can be outsourced to the environment. It can operate on timescales that feel like geology to us. It can be born from poison and pressure. It is far more fluid, far more creative, and far more humble than our story of the triumphant big-brained primate allowed. The deep ocean's quiet universe doesn't shout its truths. It pulses them. It grows them. It lets them settle like marine snow over epochs. As the first faint hints of indigo begin to bleed into the black above you, not a true light yet, but a promise of it, carry this softness with you. The world is not divided into the smart and the simple. It is woven through with countless quiet ways of knowing. The universe beneath the waves isn't a void waiting for our interpretation. It is a chorus of mindful processes, a conversation that has been ongoing in the dark for longer than we can comprehend. Our role is not to lead that conversation, but to learn its grammar, to appreciate its profound, patient complexity. We came down looking for a mirror and found instead a window into a universe of thought vaster and stranger than we dreamed. And in that realization there is a deep, quiet peace. Now let the imagery of the deep gently dissolve. Feel the weight of the water lighten around you. The pressure, which was never a burden but a presence, begins to ease its embrace. The memories of glass cities and silent falls and pulsing lights soften into impressions like a dream upon waking. There is no test on this material. no revelation you must clutch tightly. The facts can fade. The feeling is what matters. The feeling of vastness, the feeling of patience, the quiet understanding that you are part of a planet that thinks in 1,000 different ways, most of which have nothing to do with a voice in a head. Your own mind, that brilliant, chatty, anxious, wonderful thing, is just one note in a cosmic harmony. And that's okay. It's more than okay. It's a relief. You don't have to carry the whole weight of knowing. It's all right here in the dark and the light, in the quick and the slow, in the individual and the swarm. The deep ocean's final gift is this permission to let go of rigid definitions, of the need for centrality, of the tyranny of a single frantic timeline. Your breathing slows, matching a rhythm that is neither the heartbeat of a whale nor the pulse of a vent, but your own, a human rhythm, one of many, perfectly valid, deeply connected. Allow the sense of wonder to become a sense of rest. You are supported in every sense of the word. The journey is over, the quiet remains. Let it carry you the rest of the way.